computer. All right. Okay. So today I'm very happy to introduce everybody to one of my other students. Her name is Mae. And Mae was in my class last year, I believe, correct?
Yeah, last semester.
Last semester. And so the reason why I wanted to interview Mae is because Mae is, I found somebody who's very, what's the word? I would say very motivated and very driven. And the reason I wanted to interview Mae was because I think if she can share with you some of her ways of thinking and her perspective on school and how it actually shifted from high school to university, I think you'll get a lot of value. And so, Mae, I just finished interviewing Isabella, and we had something in common, all three of us, right?
Yeah. Yep, our grade 12 math grade.
Exactly. And what was the grades that we were getting?
Oh, I don't remember. I think it was like a 58 or a 48 or something.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
something
not
like that.
good.
Yeah, we all ended up having the same math grade. Math 20, I think it was. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, so yeah, it was so funny because for those of you who are watching, we didn't even know, right? Like, so we're working on we did a webinar together, and so I got them to share their grades, and they both scored really low on math 20, like 40 something. And then I started laughing, and they're like, "Why are you laughing?" I'm like, "I had the same grade." So I think it was a range between like 45 and 48 or something in math 20.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny. But there is good news. And Megan is going to talk to you about how she kind of fixed a lot of areas of her life, especially when it came to academics. So, Megan, maybe you want to answer this question, and that is, for somebody who did not very well in high school, things changed dramatically for you in university, right?
Yeah, complete 180.
Yeah. So, can you share with us, like, what kind of things helped and what you did, and maybe if you can break it down to maybe the way you're thinking, and then maybe talk about some strategies.
Yeah, well, in high school, I was having a lot of issues with I thought it was really funny in the beginning of the interview how you said that I'm quite motivated and driven, because that was one of my big issues in high school is I wasn't very motivated. I struggled to stay organized. I left everything to the last possible minute. And when I say that, I mean I was scribbling down the end of my homework 10 minutes before I went to school. And then I actually ended up taking about 5 years off of high school because I did really poorly in high school. I was like, you know what, academics isn't for me. Threw my hands up, decided to work full time. And then I decided, I'm going to go back to university. So it was about 5 years later. And I ended up finishing my last semester with a 4.0, which was absolutely insane for me. I did not think that that was within my capacities. But a lot of it was from your class, actually, was the strategies that I learned and the skills that I developed.
Oh, I'm very glad to hear that. Was there anything specifically in the class that stood out for you?
There was a couple of things. One of the big ones that I do, and the beginning of this semester, is actually a ritual that I did when I got all of my syllabi, whatever you call them. Or actually went through and I created soft deadlines for myself. So I said, okay, this essay is due in December. I'm going to make sure it's done and finished by mid-November. Things like that. Another thing that I do a lot of is speed of implementation. I'm a
Maybe describe that, what that is.
Yeah, so I'm a really big procrastinator. I never do anything until the last minute. But speed of implementation is essentially doing the task right when you get it. So what I like to do these days is I look at a task and I go, oh, I have this task. And most of my brain goes, oh, well, it's not due until Friday, so just leave it. And then with speed of implementation, you go, no, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it right now. And you have so much more free time. And for me, at least, it's not even doing the whole task at once. Sometimes it's, well, I have 5 minutes. I'm just going to start it. And it just makes the process go so much easier.
And why do you think, so basically speed of implementation is not always finishing it as just starting it, right?
Yeah.
And then you said it gives you free time and it makes things go easier. Why do you think that happened?
Um, I mean, at least in my situation, when I start something, that's always the hardest part, is just starting that draft, starting the assignment, watching that lecture video. Um, so when I've actually started it, even if I'm only 5 minutes in, getting back into it is a lot easier. And then I have more free time because that, even if it's a 5 minute chunk of work, that 5 minute chunk of work is done. It's out of the way.
Hmm. It's kind of like going uphill versus downhill, right? So
Yes.
uphill is always hard, but when you're up there, then it's just downhill from there, right? Like, so that's kind of a good metaphor. And I think I taught, that's the way I taught it to you guys. Like, it's
Yeah.
always easier to go downhill than uphill. So all you got to do is take your first few steps, and you're already kind of already uphill now. Now from now it's just from then it's just going straight downhill. So that's really good. Um, Now, one other thing that I noticed about you is that you seemed to be kind of um, you seem to have a lot of you seem to be good with organization, because I know that I think in one of the classes, not one of the classes, but and when we were working together on doing some webinars together, right, you were like totally multitasking, weren't you? Was that, what was the
Yeah.
story behind that?
Um, so I'm the type of person where I'm not type A, but I try and keep everything very organized, just because for myself, I know that if I'm not organized and if I'm not keeping track of everything around me, it just gets super out of hand and it makes my life significantly harder in the long term. So it's kind of like building a tower. It's a lot easier to put one brick on top of another than trying to build a whole wall in 10 minutes.
Yeah, but you were telling me that you were feeding your godchild or something.
Oh yeah, so last semester we were doing the speed of implementation. In your class, you were giving the 24-hour assignments, and we had class on Tuesday and Thursday, like Tuesday and Thursdays during the day. So we had until kind of Wednesday morning or Friday morning to get our assignments in. But my best friend had had surgery, and so I was watching my godkids those evenings. So I would finish class, and then I'd go and I'd be hanging out with a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, which, so I was doing the speed of implementation, the 24-hour assignments, and I had my godson hanging off of one arm, and I had to be taking care of my goddaughter, and there was a lot going on.
Yeah, and that's why I brought that up, because at the same time you still got an A in the course,
Yeah.
right? So how, like, what would you recommend to people who just have a lot going on? Like, what, any tips for them? What would you kind of tell them?
Um, I mean, it's a lot about prioritizing. So you have to, it's prioritizing and scheduling really is kind of what I amount it to, where you look at everything you have to do when you go, okay, what do I have to do first? What can I do second? What can I push to the back burner? And then scheduling out all of that time to be able to do it. So I knew, like, okay, I can put the TV on for my godkids and I can do a little bit of work, and then I can start dinner, and while dinner's cooking, I can do half the work here. And it's learning how to multitask, but multitasking strategically.
Mm, because yeah, that's actually really important that you said strategically. It's also depending on what you're multitasking. So I think a lot
Yeah.
of times some people will think, oh, multitasking is a good thing, right? So they'll, like, they'll be working on an essay, and then they'll be on the phone or they'll be on the computer while they're doing all three things at once, right? Texting their friend while writing a paper or something, right? So in that type of situation, I don't think multitasking is a good thing.
No, it's when I multitask, I try and do something that I have to pay attention to and something that's really, really mindless.
Yeah. So basically, that's kind of like um, putting your focus in one area more. Because one of the things that I find that we've been taught, which I think is very harmful to a lot of students, and that is use your time to do many things at once. But the problem with that is that if you're not focused on one specific task, that task that you're working on probably is going to take you way longer and you probably won't do a good job at it.
Hmm.
So unless you're like walking and chewing gum, it's not a good idea to do like a whole bunch of things at once. But the reason why it worked for you was because you actually did it strategically, right? Like you actually picked something that really didn't require too much brain power while you were doing something else, right? So yeah, so that's interesting. So I think if you're going to multitask, make sure that you're not doing two important things, right? Or if you're going to be in a conversation with somebody, make sure that people can tell if you're not fully there in a conversation too, right? So that's important.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good. Another question I had for you was because you were so motivated and because you had lots going on, what are some of the things that, and maybe you can share maybe some of your mindsets and stuff like that, that shifted between high school and university, and what kind of perspective did you have when you were in high school compared, or sorry, yeah, what perception did you have in high school versus university, and how did it shift?
So one concept that you actually brought up many, many times in class, and we brought it up in our webinar as well, is the concept of a fixed versus a growth mindset, where a fixed mindset, you believe that this is how you are, your success is very fixed, whereas a growth mindset, you believe that you can get better at things and you enjoy challenging yourself, things like that. And I think that was kind of a big thing in my life, was I believed very much in high school I had a fixed mindset. I think part of my downfall was I realized that high school was harder than junior high, and I started to not do so well. And I just kept thinking, oh, I can't do school. I'm awful at this. I'm never going to succeed. I might as well quit. Things like that. And I didn't like the challenge. It was awful. Whereas in university, I very much developed a growth mindset where it's, okay, I don't know this thing, but I can learn it. Okay, maybe I didn't do so well on the last midterm. That just means that, like, if I push myself and I learn more, I'll do better on the next midterm. And another thing that really helped was I didn't really have a direction or a path in high school. I was just kind of going through high school because that's what you do. Whereas because I took so long out of high school, I ended up developing kind of a goal for myself and a reason for being in university. And that really, really helps motivate me is I go through my classes, and even classes that are irrelevant to my end goal. I think like, okay, going through this, if I succeed, if I do well, if I keep going, that's going to get me to my end goal. Just keep going, just keep going.
So I think that's really important because I think one of the things that people overlook, and now, I mean, now that I've been teaching this for so long, it seems very obvious, but at the time it didn't. But most students, or most people in general, they just work really, really hard. But what happens is when you ask them what their goal is, they're not clear on it. Right? They're just like, yeah, I want to make money, or I want a good job, or I want, you know, I want to be able to live a good life, right? But then you ask them, well, what does a good life entail? And they don't know. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, just making money. I'm like, okay, but like, drug dealers make money, right? And then they're like, yeah, so like, is that what you want to do? And they're like, no. And funny times, sometimes people say yes, and then that becomes a whole other conversation. But the thing is that if they're not clear on the kind of roles they want to live, the kind of tasks they want to do, the kind of people they want to spend time with, things like that, usually they find out that they're not really going to go anywhere, right? And
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you did well was you really got clear on what you wanted.
Yeah. A big part of that, this might sound weird, but a big part of how I really developed my goals is I took on essentially the psychology of a toddler. I was spending a lot of time with my goddaughter who went into that question phase. So it's, okay, I'm going to go to university. Why? Okay, because I want to do this, that, and the other thing. Why? And it gets you really to the root of what you want your life to look like, what you want to do with your life, and you just keep asking, why? Why do you want to do this? Why is this important? And it
Yeah,
really helps with the motivation, is
yeah,
knowing what your why is.
yeah, and that's huge, and that's such a good technique. I took an exercise a while ago. It's called the 7 Whys of Success. right? And Y is in WHY, right?
Yeah.
And it really boils it down. And I think that's a really good thing to do. And what's interesting is we can learn so much from like little kids sometimes.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much from my nephews, and it's really interesting that you know, if you have the mindset of a person who's like, you know, there's always something to learn, there's always something I can figure out, there's always something to that can develop me. You start developing that growth mindset that you talked about, right? And as a result of that growth mindset, you start hitting things that you didn't even think were possible,
Mm-hmm.
right? So other than doing well in school, is there anything else, and I know I'm putting you on the spot, but is there anything else that you like are starting to experience in your life because you've adopted this, you know, I can learn and develop it mindset, this growth mindset?
Um, I think that it's really impacted a lot of my life. I found that a lot of my interpersonal relationships are getting better. Um, Kind of my big one and my goal over this whole quarantine was to try and lose weight. And since April, I'm down 20 pounds. So
Oh, fantastic. Good for you.
thank you.
So what
So
happened?
yeah,
So what happened? So this is a really good question. So sometimes what will happen is we're like, yeah, I want to lose 20 pounds or whatever, right? But what is the difference, do you think, that made the difference that caused you to lose the 20? Because everybody wants to lose, right? So
yeah.
you did it. So what was the difference? And why do you think you did it? What caused you to do it?
Um, for me, it was pretty much putting in all of the different concepts that I talked about that helped me academically. So it was, you know, speed of implementation. I personally walk for an hour every morning. I go down to Fish Creek Park. It's beautiful. And some days I just don't want to, but I always push myself and I'm like, okay, 8 o'clock, I'm going to go for my walk. And I just feel so much better throughout the day. And then it's also keeping that growth mindset throughout it, where there are times where you gain a few pounds or you hit a plateau and it's really frustrating, but you just keep saying, okay, just keep going. It's going to get better. And then maybe you switch up your exercise routine or you switch up your nutrition a little bit. And you just make sure you continue learning and you keep listening to yourself and what you need. And you keep remembering what that why is.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. The why is important, but something else you also said was consistency, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't feel like doing it, be consistent. Just do it, right? And I think even if it's not, even if you don't do it 100%, the fact is, just even if you did 50% of something is a lot better than 100% of nothing,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's huge. And I think for you, the reason why I think you've been getting these results is because you're just consistent, right? And you keep on going forward with it. So that's good. Um, let's see. One other question here is in our class that we took together, um, was there anything that like stood out for you? Is there anything that kind of, if you could teach somebody else, you would want to teach them?
Um, well, I mean, with everything with our webinar, especially because we boiled it down so much, pretty much everything that we touched on, I thought was really, really important. But um, I think the main thing that, I mean, we had it as kind of the main part of our webinar, and it's the main thing that I think a lot of people need to shift is just your mindset. Um, it's kind of one of those self-fulfilling prophecies is whether you tell yourself you can or you tell yourself you can't, you're right.
Yeah. And so how would you help someone shift it? How would you help someone shift their mindset? Not an easy question, but you've been able to do it. So how would you recommend somebody else to do it?
Well, this is actually a thing that I've been working through with my sister who just started university this semester. And it's a lot of kind of positive affirmations. Um, just reminding yourself, like, even if you hit a roadblock, you can do it. You've got this. Celebrating all of those little victories of getting 100% on a quiz that's worth 0.5% of your grade. Making sure you know what your motivation is, you know where you want your path to take you. Obviously, no one knows exactly where their path is actually going. But you keep going on that path, and you just keep asking yourself, like, the why am I doing this, keeping that motivation high, and making sure to keep trying to develop the growth mindset. It's not an easy mindset to develop. I'm a pessimist, I know this, but it's just keep saying, like this essay is hard. I don't like the question. It's an awful question, but I can make the most of it. I can do it.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. And, you know, another thing for those people watching, one of the things that is also very helpful that I've learned is look back and see everything you've done.
Yeah.
So for you, May, you were able to get through, I know you had challenges in high school, right? But you were able to get through those challenges, and now you're getting a 4.0 at university.
Yeah.
This is something that no one can take from you, right? No one can take that from you. So this is something that I would keep in my, you know, in the back of my mind all the time, right? And I call it I call it the repository of successes, right? And just keep it there. And then what'll happen is that you'll start to remember all those things that you didn't think were possible, but actually turned out way better than you thought. So I think that's another way to do it. And another way also is just to keep on asking yourself the right questions, right? So I think you did that, right? You would keep asking yourself, you know, if you're in a challenging situation, I think you kept on asking yourself how you could do better and how you could get out of it and stuff like that. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also a lot of surrounding yourself with a community.
Yeah, true.
Like, I have some of the most amazing friends who celebrate my every victory with me. I have an amazing family. You have people that lift you up, and then you also have people who kind of embrace you if you're struggling. Having that shoulder to cry on, or I have a cat. I know you were talking about maybe bringing up my cat.
Yeah, I forgot to bring, yeah.
Having a cat to cuddle from time to time if you're really struggling.
Yeah. What's the cat's name again?
Alaska.
Alaska. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's interesting. How's your cat doing? Good?
She's doing good. With all the everyone being home and everything, she's figuring out life. So she's created kind of a nest in my sock drawer, which has been quite humorous.
Yeah.
And she's spending a lot of time sitting on my lap while I'm writing an essay and stuff. So she's mellowed out since we started working on the webinar.
Loving the attention too, right? Because everybody's
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at that, so it's good. Okay, good. I think we're pretty much done. But do you have like a suggestion? Is there anything you wanted to leave with? Any last words or anything?
Not really, but just throughout your academic journey, just remember why you're doing it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I was talking again to another student before, and one of the things I think that causes most students to struggle is they actually haven't got a good reason why they want to go to school. And
Yeah.
I think if even if it means you take a year off, you got to know your why. Because if you don't know your why, you're going to be in school and you're spending $700 per class. You're spending so much time, and eventually you could be losing so much money and so much time with nothing to show for it if you don't have a strong why. I think that's an important one too.
Yeah.
I think that's great. Okay, that's awesome.